to one of the most chilling and, honestly, most widely misunderstood scientific experiments of the 20th century. We're talking about a 1968 study that set out to build a flawless, absolute utopia only to just sit back and watch it completely destroy itself. It is a wild story that captured the world's imagination back then, and trust me, it's incredibly relevant to us right now. So picture this, a methodical, perfectly designed world built for absolute comfort. The whole thing started with just 8 healthy mice, 4 males, 4 females, placed inside a massive 9-foot square enclosure. It had everything. Walk-up apartments reached by mesh tunnels, super soft nesting material, a perfectly stable climate, and the cages were meticulously cleaned on a schedule. They had hoppers that literally never ran out of food and bottles that never ran dry. These were the absolute healthiest specimens from the National Institutes of Health, and they faced 0 threats, no predators, no disease, a literal mouse paradise. But here is the massive paradox that completely baffled the world. 5 years after those initial 8 healthy mice were dropped into this world of unlimited resources, the final survivor count was exactly 0. Every single one of them was dead. And the most disturbing part? Not a single death was caused by starvation, predators, or anything a vet could have diagnosed as a physical disease. I mean, how on earth does a population just go extinct in paradise? Well, to figure that out, we've got to look at the guy who built this place. This was actually the 25th attempt by an ethologist named John Calhoun. Calhoun spent his entire career obsessed with one highly specific question. What happens to a society when absolutely nothing is hard anymore? He'd already run 24 variations of this exact experiment in forests, barns, and labs. And in every single previous attempt, he saw the exact same terrifying pattern: population explosion, hyperactive violence, apathy, and then total collapse. So this 25th attempt, Universe 25, was meant to be the flawless, clean experiment, the final, undeniable answer to his lifelong obsession. The timeline of this collapse is just fascinating to track. For the first 104 days, it was exactly what you'd expect: paradise. The mice explored, settled in, and started reproducing, basically doubling their numbers every 55 days. But right around day 315, things shifted. The population hit about 600 mice. Now, Calhoun calculated this physical space could comfortably hold around 3,800 mice, so 600 was nothing. But even at that number, the social structure started fracturing. By day 560, the population peaked at 2,200, still way below capacity, but society was already totally doomed. After day 920, not a single new mouse was born, ever again. So what exactly went wrong at day 315? Well, in the wild, when a population grows past what a territory can handle, the surplus mice just pack up and emigrate. But in Universe 25, there was no exit. With nowhere to go, the society just fractured, and these horrific, bizarre behaviors started emerging. Young males with no roles to fill just formed these listless pools in the center of the enclosure. If they got attacked, they wouldn't even fight back. They'd just take the hit and lie back down. On the flip side, you had these hyperactive, rogue males skipping all normal courtship rules and just forcing themselves into nests. The alpha males, they got completely exhausted from patrolling such a dense crowd and just gave up. And the females, unable to find any safety in this chaos, retreated to the highest, most isolated apartments and just stopped reproducing entirely. Okay, this brings us to a really bizarre concept Calhoun called the behavioral sink. Keep in mind, food and water were completely unlimited and spread out everywhere. But despite that, the mice started compulsively crowding around just a few specific feeders. They literally would not eat alone. The mere presence of other mice became this wired-in, obsessive instinct. An empty feeder in a quiet corner, even if it was overflowing with food, was totally useless to them. This crowding just fed on itself, becoming this massive physical manifestation of their completely broken psychological state. All this chaos eventually destroyed the absolute core of their society, the family unit. Because the exhausted alphas stopped patrolling, nursing mothers were left to defend the nests all by themselves. The stress was just too much, and they started to snap. Mothers were abandoning their pups, forgetting which ones were even theirs, and in the absolute worst sections, they began attacking and eating their own offspring. It is incredibly bleak. Survival rates for newborn mice absolutely tanked, plummeting to below 5% in some areas. Less than 1 in 20 even survived to weaning. So the bodies of the colony were technically alive, but the structure holding them together as a functioning species, that was totally dead. Which leads perfectly into what might be the creepiest phase of all: The very few pups that did manage to survive grew up with absolutely no functional model of a normal mouse life. Calhoun famously called this new generation the beautiful ones. See, their entire nervous systems developed in a world where every single social role was already taken. So, they just opted out. They never fought, which meant their fur stayed pristine and gorgeous. They never tried to mate. They literally just ate, slept, and obsessively groomed themselves, wandering through the colony like no one else existed. They were completely healthy on the outside, but functionally dead on the inside. Watching this whole nightmare play out, Calhoun realized these mice were actually dying two completely separate deaths. The first was the death of the spirit, and the second was the death of the body. What Universe 25 proved is that the first death, the total loss of the social fabric, purpose, and community spirit, happened years before the colony physically expired from old age. Long before the final physical death in May 1973, the colony had already perished simply because their collective spirit had completely evaporated.
Now, when this data finally came out, it caused an absolute sensation. Urbanists, politicians, pop culture, everyone in the late 20th century just lost their minds over the imagery of Universe 25. People immediately jumped to the conclusion: comfort kills, abundance breeds decay, a life without struggle is a life that destroys itself. It became this ultimate cautionary tale about modern, crowded city life. But we really need to step back a second and ask, is that true? Did absolute comfort actually kill them? Because if you look at the data, that's not quite what happened.
The real killer is actually hiding right there in Calhoun's own conclusion. It wasn't the soft nesting material, it wasn't the free food. The collapse happened because the number of individuals vastly exceeded the number of meaningful roles available, right? When the fighters had no one to fight, when mothers had no support, when the youth had literally nothing to inherit, they just shut down. The paradise didn't kill them by making them too comfortable, it killed them by erasing the friction that gave every individual a reason to actually participate in their society. And here is a crucial point that almost nobody mentions when they talk about this experiment. Calhoun was not a doomer. Actually, scratch that, he was quite an optimist. He spent the rest of his career trying to figure out how to prevent this exact collapse in humans. He saw a massive difference between us and the mice. Mice are entirely trapped in physical space. When physical space runs out, they have zero options. But humans, we can expand into conceptual space. We build ideas, we create huge networks, we invent entirely new social roles out of thin air. He deeply believed that we are capable of making a different choice than the mice did. He even coined a specific term for our escape route: ideational generativity. Okay, it sounds super academic, I know, but it's actually a beautifully simple idea. The only way to survive a world where all your physical needs are perfectly met is to just continuously invent new reasons to be here. The friction that makes life feel like it means something doesn't have to come from scraping by for food or water. It can, and really it must, come from our unique human ability to generate fresh purposes, make new art, chase new scientific discoveries, and just find entirely new ways to show up for the community. Universe 25 is essentially a masterclass in why purpose matters. It proved without a doubt that a society stripped of meaningful roles is going to collapse into apathy and extinction, no matter how comfortable you make it. But remember, the mice didn't have a choice. Their biology couldn't break out into conceptual space. But we do have that choice. So as our own world gets more advanced and physical survival gets easier, it leaves us staring down one profound question: what new roles are we going to choose to build to save ourselves?